Welcome in, Big Ten backers. We got another show for you. It is week 5, baby. The season's going quick, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, we're through all those cupcake schedules except for the SEC because they still got theirs. But conference games are on the docket, and we are having fun talking football, man. This is great. But first, we got to get to room service from Vegas. Tell us about this room service. What are we getting today?
Room service. I missed the notes on that. Are we talking the new name for the disclaimer or why?
That's the disclaimer, yeah.
I must have missed that memo. I apologize.
You got to order it up, man.
All right. Well, to all the Big Ten backers, the Big Ten backers want to clearly state that all aspects of our betting segment or any discussions around gambling are for entertainment purposes only. Betting should only take place in states where gambling has been legalized. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER or utilize the local resources in your area. Most of these services are free of charge and available 24 hours a day. Please budget accordingly and stick to a strict plan when legally gambling. Do not chase losses by betting on games or props originally not part of your plan, and do not exceed pre-planned budgets. Thank you and good luck, y'all.
The best non-ad read ever, man. All right. So, to get this started, I guess we just need to get right into the intro so we can get on moving. Talking about some football, baby. So here we go. Hot takes from coaches, our intro.
Purdue sucks. But so does Michigan and Ohio State.
Love you, man. I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world.
Who taught you how to fight? Who taught you how to be a warrior?
I hate playing against these guys. I hate playing them.
Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Like, I don't.
You better get me right now.
They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. Right? This game ain't going to be played in Hollywood.
We're in LA. It's us and USC.
We are at the top of the Big Ten Conference. I mean, we're at the top of any conference. I don't ever look at ourselves below anybody. We are
best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
Sure, you get some of that NIL money that he's sharing with Dan Lanning, but sure you get.
There's some things going on that aren't right as well, so we'll talk about how to handle it.
Really, 2 or 3 beers or 4. I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Love you, man.
Yeah, buddy, we are back. Big Ten backers here to talk some football. So let's get into some Big Ten football, starting with a team you're familiar with out there in Seattle. I know you're Vegas, Matt, but that's because you just take a lot of trips to Vegas. Did you go to Vegas this week? Did you just get back? That's the usual case.
Yeah, I did.
Bellagio calling your name?
I mean, I would say I landed earlier today from where I don't usually like to disclose. Also explains why I still have a cold for over a week. So I apologize to all the Big Ten backers for sounding a little bit off. But yeah, not really sure where I officially reside at this point in time.
Well, Washington Huskies, 3-1, your neck of the woods. But they're traveling all the way across country to head out to New Jersey to face the 3-0 Rutgers Scarlet Knights. What do you think about that, man? Friday night game. I love Friday nights. I love it. I can pay a little bit more attention to a game singly, especially when it's a Big Ten game. Last week was a baller game in Nebraska, Illinois. So hopefully this week brings another baller game. Close game, fun game to watch. What do you think about this one?
I mean, first off, I absolutely love Fox bringing these Friday night games to the forefront. I know they were a little hesitant with high school football, especially in the Midwest, but I thought this was a home run. And you're right, Illinois, Nebraska last week. I'm so thankful that did not get buried around 40 other games last Saturday. That was a must-watch game. I'm glad they got the recognition they deserve. But just a little side note, I mean, I know none of the players or coaches were around when this happened, but Washington and Rutgers actually had a home-and-home back in 2016, 2017. So these two schools have played in the last decade. But if we're going to go starting with the numbers, because that's what you pay me to do over here, you know, Line started at -3 in favor of Rutgers. You've seen that drop to -2 in favor of Rutgers. Over-under started at 45.5, and you've seen that drop just slightly to 44.5. So you're not really seeing a whole lot of movement this whole week with the lines. You're seeing about 71% of the cash in favor of Rutgers, about 59% of the cash in favor of the under. And we talked about this quite a bit last week with that Washington-Northwestern game, where that over-under dropped 13 points over the course of a week. Actually closed down around 40, which was about a 15.5-point drop. And last week's game was 24-5 in favor of the Huskies. So they actually hit the under on that game. So really the offense is just not clicking or consistent with the Huskies. Really interested to see how they start handling this grueling travel schedule. But I'll tell you what, you've been bullish on Rutgers all year. I've kind of knocked you for it. That was a tough win they got last week in Blacksburg. What were your thoughts on that one? Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I mean, they jumped out to a huge lead and kind of squandered it, but they hung in there at the end. It seems like Virginia Tech is a really inconsistent team. You would think with everything that they've returned that they would be a hell of a team this year with Kyron Drones. They have all the pieces. They just haven't put it together. And they did for, a quarter, the third quarter against Rutgers and maybe a little bit of the fourth. But this is a gauntlet of Rutgers' schedule. Like, they have a weak-ass schedule in the Big Ten. They got Virginia Tech last week, Washington this week, and then Nebraska up, and that's their biggest games. They play SC, I believe, too. But we'll get into their schedule in a second. Get through these next 3 weeks, though, and win them all. Watch out Big Ten championship game, because that's a possibility because their schedule is so weak. Washington is averaging 27 points per game. That's 85th nationally, and their defense is giving up 10.3 points per game. So that's pretty darn good. 11th nationally. Rutgers, on the other hand, is scoring at 21st in the nation, 37.9 points per game, and the Scarlet Knights are 29th nationally, giving up 15.7 points per game. So it kind of looks like it might be a little bit of a defensive battle. The Scarlet Knights have the edge as far as scoring offense. But Rutgers, like I said, came out to a big lead last game, and they just needed a little bit of help at the end, and they got it, man. They had a late pick, blocked interception from their cornerback, and Kyle Monagai, man, he was last year's Big Ten's leading rusher, and he is averaging 154 yards per game at this date. He's going to need to average that tomorrow night to win this game, because I believe Washington can give them a game. They're probably on par with a Virginia Tech team. Will Rogers is going to have to step it up. He didn't play like he has played in Mike Leach's offense back at Mississippi State, and he needs to. But the other thing that Washington has, those Huskies have, Jonah Coleman could break out, because he's had 373 yards on the season and 4 touchdowns so far. So you've kind of seen that a little bit anemic offense. What do you think about it? You've seen it in person, right?
I've seen it in person. I've watched it for multiple weeks. Again, it's just not there, and I don't know if this is Will Rogers just not fully grasping the playbook, or his limitations as a quarterback, or simply just Jed Fish doesn't have the offensive weapons he had a year ago down in Tucson. It could be a combination of all three, and I think it's really tough for a lot of Husky fans. Is last year you saw just this prolific, high-powered offense. We're certainly not seeing that this year. My apologies, but I want to dig a little bit deeper, because as you talked about the schedule, it is a tale of two schedules for these teams. If you really look at Rutgers picking up this win, it's not laughable. I wanted to laugh at you, and then I looked at Rutgers' schedule. It is not out of the realm of possibility for them to
bring it up here real quick.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think even at Nebraska, I think Nebraska is pretty good. That's a winnable game for Rutgers if they do everything right. I think USC is a serious challenge. Same with Maryland and Illinois, but these are not the Ohio State, Oregon, Penn States, right? Where you look and say, my goodness, they need a miracle to win. Now, every game on this schedule is winnable.
And the one thing that we didn't expect on this schedule was for Illinois and Michigan State to be as good as they actually are this year. We expected, kind of bottom of the basement from those two, and expected a definite win. Well, that's not a definite win anymore with the way that they're both playing. And we'll see what Michigan State's got. We'll talk about that later. Wisconsin, yeah, it's a little iffy with what they've got. But, yeah, as far as their schedule compared to Washington's schedule, completely different. Completely different.
I'm glad you talked about that. And Husky fans might want to scold me a little for this. This could be one of those games that decides whether or not the Huskies are a 6-6 team or a 7-5 team. And If you look at the schedule, it kind of makes sense. I know Michigan comes in here. I think Michigan proved what they can do at Iowa. I think Huskies are going to see as a real challenge there. USC, Penn State, Oregon. Really tough schedule here. And with that loss to Washington State,
four of the top Big Ten teams, like power ranking wise right now.
Four of the 5. Yeah.
Which that's a hell of a schedule. Until we pulled this up again, I forgot how tough their schedule was. So they didn't get dealt a very good card by the Big Ten in the first year of scheduling.
Not whatsoever. At Rutgers, at Iowa, at Indiana, at Penn State. Those are 4 East Coast time zone or East and Central time zone games. That's really tough.
But yeah, and like we said, the 4 of the top 5 teams. And when you go back and look at Rutgers, if you want to count USC, they have 1 of the top 5 teams. Maybe you could count Illinois. We'll see what they do tomorrow.
Yeah, I really hope the Big Ten kind of bounces out. I remember when we were talking in March, right, when we were doing early over-unders, there were some pretty lopsided schedules. And we saw that with Nebraska. We saw it with Rutgers here currently. And I think Washington's on the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but you don't pay me to analyze. You pay me to talk about the bets and the money. So, looking at this again, getting back to Rutgers currently at -2 and the over-under sitting at 44.5. I'll say straight up, I think this is a challenge for Washington. They've beaten up on the teams they should have. And honestly, they should have beat Washington State, and they lost that one. Until Washington can prove to me that they can put together a complete game against let's call it a bowl-eligible caliber team, I say lay the points, give me the Scarlet Knights. How about you?
Let me go back to that over-under a little bit more. I am trying to get our Illinois dude set up, so give me just a second here. I'm going to give him another little invite. Here we go. And he's jumping in really soon. Here we go. All right. Let me go back to the spreadsheet real quick. Take a look at this. What did you go with? Laying the points?
Oh, I took Rutgers all the way. I think a 3-point win is conservative for Rutgers at -2. I love that line. So
44.5 over under. That's a tough one too, because that's probably right about where they'll be. Washington struggles on offense. Rutgers is almost average. So I am going to go with the under.
That's interesting. Washington does have a very good defense. I do want to be clear about that. So,
11th in scoring defense in the country.
Yeah.
Giving up 10.3 points per game.
Their middle line, that linebacker Bruner he's probably going to be like a 3rd round pick, right? But he's going to be one of those fan favorites in the NFL that you love and is a steal.
For sure. So. That Belichick defense, baby. Oh, yeah.
All right.
So we got the pick on that one. We're going to move right along to the Midwest CornFest game of the week, man. Game of the week. Here we go. Rated on rated, and this is why we do what we do. Because this is so much fun to watch, man. Games like this is why the Big Ten conference games are so important, so much fun to watch. People are starting to separate themselves, right? Illinois, you would have never thought coming into the season that they were going to be ranked going into Penn State and getting that whiteout game. What did you think about that to start it all off?
Talking about last week's game or just kind of where they're standing?
No, just Illinois, coming in and bringing the whiteout for Penn State. I mean, it's pretty impressive that the Illinois conjured up that much in such a short amount of time. 4-0.
Penn State stopped doing the whiteout once they kept inviting Ohio State to the whiteout and getting beat on national television every other year. So they originally scheduled Illinois thinking, okay, we got a pretty easy team. The whiteout's going to be jumping. Well, not so fast. I'll be honest. Last week, I was a little leery of that -8 in favor of Nebraska just because I thought Nebraska was going to win by a touchdown. And granted, game with the overtime was a very good game. But I thought Illinois played just incredibly consistent on both sides of the ball. I thought they went into a hostile environment and it did what they needed to do to win, which is all you can say. And I'll be honest, I was actually impressed by Altmaier. Last year when I watched him, it seemed anemic. He just seemed like one of those 2-3 star recruits that never was going. He was making some very solid reads last week, was getting the ball, had some zip behind it.
Hey,
and it's
if we're going to talk about it, if we're going to talk about this, we got to bring in our Illinois podcast.
Yeah, let's bring in an expert on Illinois football.
Keeping it orange and blue, baby. Here we are. We got Ryan coming into the show. Welcome in, Ryan.
What's up, you guys? What's up?
Hey,
nice to have you, man. How you been?
I've been good. I've been enjoying the kind of, how you got to put your thick skin on when you get on X. So,
for sure.
I feel like some people just don't know how to handle it. Like they're like, oh my gosh, they said something bad. I'm taking so offense to this. I'm going to insult their entire family and swear them down, and then I'm going to block them and have my day ruined. And it's just like, oh my goodness. I mean, I take half of it with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, what happens out there on the field, we can, argue about it or we can agree, disagree, but I think it's pretty clear that Illinois is an improved team and they're not last year's team. And, Luke Altmaier's not playing like Luke Altmaier did last year. And, I heard a little bit of the show before I got on here. A lot of that is because last year was his very first season. And I get it was Drew Aller's first season too, but his first, not everyone is the same is how I'm going to say this. You might get acclimated differently. But didn't Drew play one? Drew had already been acclimated with Penn State last year, correct?
Yes, for sure.
So he had a year already in the program, and Luke Altmaier came like a month or two before the Penn State game. He wasn't there, all summer. And he kind of was just getting, used to the offense with Barry Lunny. And, it took him some time and he improved after that Penn State game, 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And he was playing a lot better towards the end of the year. And I think there was enough room for everybody to say like, hey, like we know this guy's got a nice arm. He's pretty mobile. No one's expecting him to be a first or second round draft pick. So I think the staff is just pleasantly surprised that he's taken this big of a leap because, he's put himself in the top 5 or 6 quarterback, in the Big Ten range. So that's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and that's what I was kind of going to get a hit on with you was prior to this season, fans may have been losing faith in Bielema and Altmaier in general, but there were some positive moments like you mentioned. Like you could say he was mobile. You could say sometimes he shined. During the length of the season, though, last year, it lacked a little bit of production and wins, right? I mean, and everyone's going to measure you by wins. So
I would say that, but the glimmer, well, not glimmer, the fact that there was a lot of positivity was you saw him rebound. I think 2 weeks later, they went on the road to Maryland, and he had a great game. He had some big pass plays, a big touchdown in the first quarter, and then a huge third down conversion late in the fourth quarter to set up a big win on the road at Maryland. He had a big game against Wisconsin. A game that Illinois, I'm just going to keep it honest, that Illinois should have won the game. They were winning by like 18 in the end of the third quarter. Johnny Newton got kicked out of the game because of the targeting call. And then it just changed and it went downhill. It was like it just sucked the life out of the stadium, of the team. And then the whole Brett Bielema was still sore about this because if you guys watched the Nebraska game, the Illinois had an offensive lineman catch a touchdown. Number 94, Brandon Henderson. Yeah. So now you have to report linemen changing jerseys when they're on offense. Well, last year, I guess it had just been like a courtesy. Like if you have an lineman that's going to change a jersey or set up somewhere where he's going to be an eligible receiver. You were supposed to let the other team know or something like that, the officials. Well, last year in the Wisconsin game, Luke Fickell didn't do that. He just put one of his linemen in there and changed his jersey from what he warmed up in. And then they ended up throwing a game-winning touchdown to him with like 10 seconds left. So
the gentleman agreement no longer.
Yeah, no longer. Oh, and Bielema was hot. Apparently at the Big Ten Media Day, Luke Fickell said, "Oh, is that why Brett still doesn't talk to me?" He's like, "Yeah, he wasn't playing that." So,
speaking of Bielema, hey, what's the excitement level like in Champaign? Is the game day vibe like electric this year so far? Starting off 4-0, it's got to be crazy in Champaign. I know they stormed the field against Kansas, and that was huge.
And even though Kansas doesn't look to be, a good team per se, they've blown 3 late fourth, leads where they had in the fourth. Yeah, I mean this year they blew the game against West Virginia. They were up 11.
Oh, I was meaning that Illinois has blown a couple games to Kansas as of late. And
so last year, they got blown out in Lawrence, and then they got their revenge this year. So but to answer your question, the game, the vibe in Champaign is just, it's definitely something that's not the norm. 4-0, first time since 2011. So that's a while. That's not something Illinois fans have become accustomed to. But I can tell you this, the fan base has 100% bought into Brett Bielema and what his tough, smart, dependable approach is. And as much as maybe people are like, "Oh, it's cheesy, blah, blah, blah." When you look at what he did at Wisconsin, I mean, he didn't just make that up out of nowhere, winning 3 straight Big Tens. And it wasn't like he was just winning the West Division to do that. He was beating Ohio State's to do that. So he can do it. He even had success at Arkansas in the SEC for a few seasons. And he's taken some things he learned from his downfall at Arkansas to fix what he messed up there, which is O-line depth. The O-line has much improved this year, as you guys will see Saturday. I know we'll get some talk about this game here soon, but
for sure.
You guys will see. There'll probably be a sack or two of Altmaier, but overall, the right tackle and left tackle Illinois has they're very good. Melvin Priest, go ahead.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. The difference between last year and this year. Bielema is known as an offensive line dude. I mean, he looks like an offensive lineman himself right now. This line has transformed this year from what I've gathered, and given Altmaier some time to throw. But also, Altmaier is reading the defense quicker and getting the ball out pretty quick. I think he knows his offense and he knows his progressions well. Last year, they were giving up 3.3 sacks per game, 40 on the year. That was 119th in the nation. Now they're 77th in the nation, 1.75 sacks per game. And they've had a little bit of competition too. So that's awesome. I mean, they started already 2 games that were some competitive teams, right? So there's a big difference this year than last year.
Yeah, and so for any Penn State fan, who's watching this that may not realize this, since 2008 or 9, I believe, only Nick Saban had put more offensive linemen into the NFL. So I just want people to think about that. So, and that's his thing, man. That's his bread and butter. And so he takes great pride in that. So the fact that last year was how it was, that drove him nuts. So they were motivated to spend NIL dollars on getting good linemen. And because linemen make what he wants to do work, and that's not just run the ball, that's, kind of ball control. You want to, that's how he gives his defense a rest a lot too. And they'll work the clock. And I'll be shocked if you don't see that Saturday. Even if Illinois is down 7 or 10, they want to limit the possessions that Penn State gets. And, they were able to wind the clock and milk it and ice it against Kansas. And they were able to take their time and get the game tied against Nebraska. And really, if without an Altmaier fumble with 3 or 4 minutes left, Illinois was looking to milk that down to the last minute or second there to try to win the game on a last-second field goal. But they were able to stop Nebraska, who missed a field goal, and then the game went to overtime, and you guys saw how it played out.
Sack after sack after sack. Hey, I'm going to take you off Vegas until we get to the Vegas stats. Put you back in the waiting room, and we'll bring you back when we need some more room service, all right?
Sounds good.
Here we go. And then we're going to bring on our man, Big Ten and beyond, and Penn State fan. Here we go. All right, we got a little bit of wrapping up to do with Illinois, so I'm going to ask Ryan another question, then we'll get into some of the banter, go back and forth a little bit.
For sure, yeah, no problem.
So you kind of talked about it a little bit against Nebraska. The defensive line played especially well, and even better against the run than I thought they would. I mean, and then the sacks in overtime, obviously 3 out of 4 plays were a sack in overtime, which was awesome. I mean, great play by the defense. Talk about how the defensive line has kind of changed things, and they're going to need it against Penn State with Singleton back there, who averages 104 yards per game.
Well, yeah, 100%. So, they would. There was a lot of worry this year with the defensive line losing, Jershawn Newton to the second round, and he went to the Commanders, and Keith Randolph, who was picked up by the Bears. They just they lost some guys had been their anchors for 3 or 4 years, and they went to the portal and got Dennis Briggs from Florida State, and had thankfully have had a nice youth movement they've kind of grown, and their second unit is some sophomores. Is actually one of them's a freshman, but he's talented, Alex Bray, and then some sophomores who've really stepped up and come into their own, and they've made themselves to be an adequate unit to be the second unit defensive line. But I want you guys to know, Illini fans know that what's coming with the Penn State running back unit. We saw them last year in Champaign. They know that this is probably going to be the toughest test of backs that they're going to play all year. And I know the team is more prepared than anything I can tell you right now. It doesn't mean they're going to, shut them down or anything, but the defensive line, I know this will be ready and more prepared than I am for you. So
sure. Well, that Champaign room now has a big D in it, so they're ready to go, man. That defensive line looks good.
Yeah,
I was impressed. They were blowing up that right guard for Nebraska almost every play. Stopped their run game for sure. So
the defensive ends on this team. The defensive ends on this team are good. So Saturday, if there's pressure on Aller, you're going to see it from the likes of guys like Seth Coleman, Gabe Yakis, and Alec Bryant, and those are guys that had offers from like Tennessee and other places like that. But Illinois has done pretty decently recruiting and picking up some specific pieces like that. So yeah, I'm expecting a battle. And before we get into our banter here at Big Ten Beyond, remember this is Illinois is a 20.19. What is it? 20 guys dog right now.
Yeah.
So it's not like.
It was like 17 or 17 and a half last time.
It's not like the deck's already not stacked. No one's gonna pick Illinois. I'm a realist, but I will also keep it real in the sense that you probably won't hear a lot of people saying some of the stuff I will. I'm not gonna get on here and just come out and say that Illinois is gonna go into Happy Valley and win. But as you start talking here, I think. I'm very confident that Illinois will have a very good showing.
They're going to challenge.
And to where Penn State fans might even go, this Illinois squad, man, they're pretty good.
They're the real deal.
Yeah, you can beat a team and still think like, hey, that's a good team.
Yeah,
sure.
I don't. And good evening, by the way. I don't doubt that at all. Bilema is very highly respected, right? He's a really good guy. Like you said, some people think it's kind of cheesy and stuff. I don't. Franklin kind of has that goofiness about him, where it's like he looks out for his players. His players love him, and I think they run hard nosed, old school, disciplined football. They don't make mistakes, And I always try to put myself in the shoes of the opponent, right? So I'm always thinking like Illinois, and Ryan was saying how he touched on something is their best strategy, like the best thing they can do is keep that steady grinding offense on the field somehow and keep Aller and Penn State offense off the field. Like that's just a big key, right? If they can stay and get these drives out. And I was thinking today, well, how do they do that? Well, Bowling Green kind of showed what can be
all
successful.
right, Vegas. Sorry, just a second. Vegas, you're back on stage. Don't pick your nose or anything.
But the Bowling Green kind of gave a little bit of a game plan, right? And what Bowling Green did is like what you're talking about with Altmaier, right? They knew the Penn State defense is going to be pressuring. They knew they're going to be coming after them. And we got, 2 first-round defensive ends, all that stuff. So what they were doing is I think that quarterback, I forget his name now, for Bowling Green, he was averaging like 2.4 seconds to throw. It was snap, 5 yards, snap, 7 yards, and they were taking little chunks down the field, and they were stalling at the 20s, right? Because then that's where that speed gets you, like down in where the field's short. And watching Altmaier and like what you talked about and stuff, they're really efficient. They're gonna do that. They're gonna hit the flat. If Penn State has a weakness, it's at linebacker, right? They got some youth at linebacker, and who's not gonna take a wide receiver or a running back dumping out a linebacker all day? You know what I mean? You're going to get that 7 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree with them there. Like if I'm Illinois, like that's what I'm doing. I'm chipping and trying to stay on the field like as much as possible. They got the 32nd ranked defense. They got a really good secondary on Illinois. Like they're not playing around. So this will be the toughest secondary that Aller has seen in a while.
Yeah,
right?
I definitely think it's the best team overall that Penn State's played this year. So
yeah, so far, yeah, absolutely.
And then I know it's like there were some people who were trying to compare West Virginia beat Kansas by 4 and Illinois only beat Kansas by 6. And I'm like saying like Illinois and Kansas are the same. I'm thinking, well, Kansas was winning by 11 with 4 minutes to go and blew the game. Yeah. Illinois was winning by 6 for the final,
Yeah.
They were winning
Saturday, right? People always like to juxtapose it. Like, you can have 2 teams. It doesn't matter in college football. Like, it doesn't matter,
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, if Illinois and West Virginia, I think if Illinois and West Virginia played on a neutral field, I feel like Illinois would be close to a 5 or 6 point favorite. So,
yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is the best team they've played all year. Both of them can say that. Yeah, the one thing that I really like for Illinois is that, they've went on the road and as much as I can tell you, I get that, Happy Valley and the 110,000 and the whiteout is special and maybe the best environment. It's probably one of the top 3 or 4. But let me tell you, going to Nebraska and that is not unhostile. Okay.
Oh, no. Yeah, sure. It's Nebraska, right?
It's wild. It's crazy. It's rabid. And you know how hungry they were for their first ranked win and God knows when.
It's funny. I saw somebody post on X today, you're surfing and you see funny random stuff. And I saw a post by the Gators and it was like, a little marketing thing from the university with a picture. And it said, the last 6 home games have sold out and they were celebrating. And then Nebraska commented on the Gators, right? You got to love college football banner.
400.
It's like, we have 144 solid games in a row sold out. Like, they love their football there. Like, they don't care if they're like 0-12. Like, they're going to.
It doesn't matter.
Right? So it was just really funny,
Yes.
So I got a question. We kind of got into it a little bit. Bielema was caught on record saying he wasn't sure what white out energy is. That white energy is for real, man. I mean, I've been there. I've seen it in person. You see it on TV and you're just like flabbergasted. Even Kirk Herbstreit is like, man, this place is awesome every time he goes for the white out. So tell me your thoughts on what Bielema was saying. Was it taken out of context? Did he just not know, Has he not been in a whiteout?
No. He's okay. I can tell you this. He's coached. I'm pretty sure there was a whiteout with you guys could look in any of those years he was at Wisconsin. I'm sure there was 3 or 4 big matchups where that Wisconsin came to Happy Valley. You guys could look that up at one point, but
you have to look.
I think
Vegas, you're on it, right?
Yeah, Vegas. Come on, man. He was. I think yes, it was taken out of context because what he said before all that. If you guys haven't watched it, I watched the entire press conference.
He was complimenting. Complimenting a lot.
He was complimenting Penn State and how the fan base is so loving and loyal, and like how great of a crowd it is. And he was going down the history of Joe Pa and talking about his years as a grad assistant when they went one of his first games, I guess, as a grad assistant at Iowa. Like they were getting their ass kicked. I think it was like 28-0. It might have been the '94 team with Kerry Collins and by the way, the Illinois game that year.
Funny, real quick, that '94 team and Kerry Collins, and they're all going to be there for homecoming. It's
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So and it was Kajana Carter, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So it was that year. He was a grad assistant at Iowa. And he was telling a funny story about how they were down 28-0 after the first quarter. And he looked over at like the defensive coordinator and he was like, "We're going to lose 112-0. And then he's doing the math, like being an idiot.
Yeah.
And so then he was like saying,
when I'm watching the TV.
Yeah. So then he was like saying, and then he's like, whatever. He's like, wherever the fans were wearing blue or white. And he goes, and they're going to be wearing one of them. They're going to be loud.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring that whiteout energy, whatever that means. I think.
Yeah, because
I missed that. I didn't watch
Franklin made
thing.
that up, right? Nobody's ever heard that. So
Like, and I actually know a couple Penn State fans that think that him saying that was just dumb. So, and it wasn't meaning like dumb as in like it's just out of nowhere. Like no one's ever heard that. Like I know I'd never heard someone say that.
Yeah.
So. Brett Bielema
I posted about it initially and got a huge reaction, right, on Big Ten Beyond.
Yeah.
But once it came out and I heard the whole thing, I immediately, went back in and said, "Hey, this isn't just like the radio show. The radio show was Nebraska's tougher than Penn State whiteout, right?" And it went viral. And later that day, someone sent me a link to I couldn't find the radio show. I couldn't find it, right? And I had Illinois fans coming after me, and I'm like, "It's a radio show. I don't," right? So somebody sends me a link to the radio show, and I hear it, and I immediately say, "Hey, this wasn't Brett. It was the announcer that was talking about," right? Brett didn't say, So people are taking things out of context, and they're trying, hyping things up. We don't need.
But I mean, you get those sound bites. You get those sound bites, and you could post that in a locker room. I mean, that might make a big difference, and it might make the crowd a little bit more rowdy. Which
I know the fans are nuts because a lot of the fans don't realize. It's a good chunk don't realize that it's just like a sound bite. So there's a lot of fans fired up out there.
Oh yeah,
so
sure. That's the easiest thing to do in the media right now. Is just sound bite the hell out of it.
And I saw one Penn State fan say something, and one of the Illini writers was like showing them the context of what he was saying. And they're like, "Look, calm down. We were just trying to get the fan base juiced up, okay?"
Oh, geez.
And it's like,
and it's going to.
So
he's
for
honest about it, I guess. But
so what Brett, from what he said, just to finish the point, was that he said no matter what, blue or white, they're going to be loud. So
yeah.
So
it's respectable. It's fine.
All right, boys. So right now, if you were to draft someone, who are you drafting? Drew Aller or Altmaier?
Oh man, that's good. They're both.
If
good.
you're in charge, if you're the general manager, who are you taking?
Man.
Well, I mean, I would say right now, I'll be honest, I'll say Drew Aller because I think his stature, his arm strength, his measurables, if you're drafting. But I'm not sure what Luke will be next season. I know he'll be back one more year, and but if we're talking about today, then I would pick Drew Aller. Luke Altmaier's with a big year this year. Luke Altmaier can play himself into that next season. So and guess what? He would be okay with that.
Sunbelt Syndicate says Penn State whiteout W for the Nittney Lions.
Yeah. I am. Thanks, Sunbelt. I ran some really cool stats this week on Drew Aller about pocket protect, like how he performs in different situations. And it was like, how does he perform with a clean pocket? How does he perform hurried? And how does he perform like when blitzed, like all out blitzed? And his best numbers were when it was clean. Obviously he's back there. He's got protection. He can thread the needle. His best numbers were when it was clean and when he was all out blitzed. His numbers when he was blitzed were literally the same as when it was clean. He did
What's his rating? What's his rating with the clean pocket?
I have to pull my numbers up now. But someone pulled that for Luke Altmaier's. Yeah.
Luke Altmaier has a 93.4 passer rating with a clean pocket.
Yeah, Aller's like a 91. It's like a 91, and then under when he's blitzed. So it was like a 91 with like 5 touchdown average or something, right? Okay. And then when he's blitzed, it was like 89 with a 5 touchdown. Like it was this almost the same as when he's blitzes. So because he doesn't have to think about it, right? It's like Maverick. I don't think, I just do. And they're like, that's dangerous. He gets blitzed. He just runs out and his natural ability takes over, And the thing that's made him a little dangerous this year, obviously he's matured, but he's dropped about 12, 15 pounds, and we talked about that before. So now a couple few times a game, he's more mobile, moving around and stuff. And it's really helped out a lot.
All right. Before we get to some picks, we'll bring Vegas on in just a second to get to some picks. But we got to go through a little bit of stats. We already talked about Singleton averaging 104 yards per game. That Penn State offense, yards per game, 537. That's 7th in the nation. And points per game, 17th in the nation with 41.4. The Illini are averaging 379.3 yards per game and points per game, 32.3. So little bit of a favor for Penn State, but also the schedule has been a lot easier for Penn
I will
State.
say that Penn State's is inflated because of the Kent State game with 700 yards, right?
For
Let's
sure.
be real.
Yeah. And that's what's hard about this time of year. Like if you want to do national stats, it's hard.
I want to agree with what Ryan said, and there's probably fans out there to be like, man, this Penn State guy, was he? In the beginning, Ryan was saying about how Illinois is going to show up right now. Penn State, you take care of business, right? No matter who the opponent is, but it's not going to be Kent State and it's not going to be West Virginia, right? And Illinois is going to fight in the beginning, and Penn State's going to realize that they have a full size, very disciplined team there. With, like you said, with the offensive line, the Illinois is averaging 156 yards rushing a game, right?
Yep.
But for me, the key is I try to look at like a shatter point. And for me, the key is with Altmaier, he's 57% of their total yardage, Altmaier. So he's the key, right? They got a great offensive line there. He's got like around 64 yards rushing. It's like 2.4 yards a carry. So my thing is that offensive line for Illinois has got to be stout. If Penn State starts getting in there and rattle him a little bit, Altmaier's not a mover, right? And if you get him off his game, Penn State can handle the run. So I think that's the whole key is like, can they break through and get through that offensive line of Illinois and shake up Altmaier?
We talked a little bit about last night, didn't we? Big Ten and beyond. We talked a little bit about the turnover margin and how that is a huge favor for Illinois.
Yeah.
Plus 7 in the turnover margin.
I can tell you one thing Penn State fans won't want to happen is some silly like little, when you guys do your whole bring in the backup quarterback fun razzle dazzle.
Yeah.
And he gets his little moment, whatever you guys do with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know why can't you just play Aller? I don't understand.
Well, that's the whole. Well, what's funny, I wanted to tell you earlier is Colt Necky.
The Colt Necky.
Colt Necky was an offensive lineman too. So him and Bielema are both offensive linemen, previous offensive linemen. But his whole thing is a lot of people since over the last 2 weeks, Kent State and everything, the bye week, Kent State, were touching on that point, including me. Like, hey, if you have the best weapon on the field, you have Drew Aller, right? By all intents and purposes, is a top 10 quarterback right now, and he's on a roll, right? you don't pause that to do like a fluke or trick play or something. You let him keep chewing up, right, on a roll like that. Everybody knows that. You know, if you want to run a wrinkle from time to time, that's fine. But, you know, that's the thing is, hey.
Don't get him out of rhythm.
Yeah, do these things, but don't get your number one player out of rhythm, you know? So
I mean, and I saw him throw a pick against Kent State early in the game, and I'm like, I was like, you can't have that happen this week because I'm going to tell you.
They can't play around.
You don't want Illinois to get any momentum and feeling even more like, hey, we can do it.
Yep.
Because then you don't want. Let's say Illinois is up 7-0 because of something like that.
Yeah.
Then Illinois is really going to believe like, hey, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Like,
all right.
That's how college football works, right? You get something that we've seen it. You get a team that's down. You see it every week. Down multiple touchdowns. One freaking play happens. One play happens, and it just fires a team up, and they they're in it, right? So
let's get to these picks. Can you guys give me a final score prediction, and we'll let you out of here. And we got to move on to the next game.
Yep.
You go first, Ryan. You're the
visitor. I'll go. And so because I wanted to talk about these two guys, I'll mention it. And so Illinois' got two very good weapons at the wide receiver unit. You know, Pat Bryant
always open.
6 touchdowns already this year,
including as a fullback.
Yeah, and one of them is right. Game-winning touchdown at Nebraska as a fullback. See, I love the play call there from Barry Lunny.
You don't hear that word. You don't hear that word anymore. Fullback.
Exactly.
You don't hear it anymore, right? It's like
so I actually think that Illinois will be able to have some success throwing the ball with those two guys. Zachary Franklin is the other, by the way. He's he didn't have a great year at Ole Miss last year. A lot of it because he was injured. But if anybody there's a lot of football heads out here. Okay, if anybody's just curious how good Zachary Franklin is, watch his UTSA highlight clip on YouTube sometime. He's just nuts. He's had 2 years of over 1,100 to 1,200 yards receiving. 1 year he had 12 touchdowns, the other he had 15. Well, anyway, Barry Lunny was his OC at UTSA before he came to Illinois, and Franklin and Bryant are going to make it. They're gonna make the Penn State cornerbacks really work. And I know there's a key injury to the Penn State. You guys lost your big for your free safety, right?
Yeah, Winston.
Winston, KJ Winston, which is huge. Yeah. I know he was like a glue guy, a mesh guy, an important piece of jack of all trades type guy, whatever. That's what I was told by a few of my Penn State.
No, that's accurate. He was able to move around.
And that's a guy that I think would have definitely given those guys fits and problems. So I think Illinois is going to score enough to definitely keep it under the number to cover. I said 31-23 on my podcast and Penn State, and that's what I'm going to stick with.
That's reasonable.
So I think Illinois is going to make it a game. It's going to be a very good game. I think Illinois is going to show well, and I think they're going to keep it within a score. So I said 31-23. That's an 8-point game, but so that's what I got. I think the atmospheres are going to be great, but Penn State's going to be able to do some things and move the ball. You saw Raiola, even though Illinois has a great secondary, Raiola was able to find some openings when Illinois went to zone, and they left some points on the board as well. So I'm not going to sit here and think that Illinois will keep Penn State to 20 or anything like that, but I think it's going to be a good game. So I said 31-23 Penn State.
All right, what do you got? Big Ten and beyond. Give it to us.
So I think really, like I mentioned before, defensively, you guys have great wide receivers. Our secondary is going to be tested, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the key to that is a quarterback again, and Altmaier is really the key. And if Penn State isn't flushing him out, just making him uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form, right? Getting through that offensive line, making a move or whatever, Illinois is going to be keeping right up with him. If they're completing passes down the field and chunking down the field, right? So I think defensively, that's the key for Penn State is to try and get to Altmaier, right? Make him uncomfortable. Offensively, I mean, it's been lights out, right? Even against, no matter who Penn State has played, they've been really, really high powered. We got Tyler Warren, who is the number 1 tight end in the nation right now.
I'm watching out for the Tyler Warren lining up as a quarterback, right?
Yep. He lined up as a quarterback last week and ran a like a
Wildcat.
a direct snap for 20 yards or something, 30 yards.
Mhm.
Obviously, about the running back, Singleton and Allen, everybody knows Thunder and Lightning and stuff like that. But for me, it's going to be, that secondary. Drew Aller is going to be tested, right?
Mhm.
He's going to be tested with that secondary, and he needs these receivers. They've improved greatly this year, but he's really going to need Omari Evans is ridiculous. Amari Evans is averaging 26 yards a catch right now, right? He is
just got to get it to him a little more.
Yeah, he's a legitimate deep guy, right? But the thing is, you can't have one guy. You need other receivers that are going to be getting open, right, and stepping up. But Colt Necky, he's wild. He's doing a lot of stuff with running backs and even throwing, like you said, the offensive linemen and lining up 3 tight ends, things like that. So Dilemma's good with that stuff. He's going to be doing some things like that. So I think we're going to see some unpredictable things where we're all going to go, oh, holy crap, right? What I can't believe they just did that on either side, But my prediction is you get a surging Penn State offense in there, surging Penn State team. And as the game goes on with that crowd in the whiteout, it really starts compounding like we've seen before. And I think that Penn State they adjust in the second half to get to Altmaier, and I think they just start to pull away in the second half. And I say Penn State 41 and West Virginia 20.
Illinois.
Sorry,
West Virginia.
Jeez,
man, you slammed them hard.
Yeah, Illinois. Sorry, didn't mean to curse you like that.
Yeah. So they just score enough to cover, huh? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, 17.5, but I'm looking at the whole big picture and just the whole body of work. And I said, I think the way that Penn State has played, last year into this year, the whole big second half thing and the way the defense adjusts in the second half. And I really think a big difference is going to be that noise in the whiteout in the defense.
I was gonna say for both of you before I get off here, why do you and I think so many people think that Bowling Green was able to keep it within 10 and maybe they could have went down and got a field goal or so towards the end of the game, but why
it was a couple things. One, I was at that game.
So what I'm saying, and I think Illinois is better than Bowling Green. So
yeah. Sure. So Bowling Green came in. I'll tell you the first thing: the defense did not take Bowling Green seriously at all. They went into that game. We're like, hey, we're just going to push them around, whatever. Bowling Green came into that game with a plan and was not scared of Penn State. And they were boom, boom, boom. And then we found out today. I don't know if you guys saw. It's a really funny story. Back during practice before the season started, Kobe King, our linebacker, was making jokes about, because they have headsets now, right? They have, mics, earpiece. And he's like, dude, I can't understand a word that Tom Allen is saying into the headset. He's like, got a mouthful of marbles, right? And they made a joke about it.
Yeah.
Well, they announced today that Dan Connor, the Penn State linebacker, he's part of the defensive coaching staff now. He's moving to the sidelines, and he's calling in the plays. And Tom Allen's moving to the booth because apparently nobody could understand Tom Allen. They said in the Bowling Green game, almost the whole first half, they couldn't understand. The defense couldn't understand what he was telling them. They couldn't understand him through the mic, and they were out. So
he's like, let me tell you,
it sounds silly. It sounds like a spoof movie. Like
we're going to 3-man front.
But it's hilarious. So they made that change. I think that was part of it, right? I think Penn State take him seriously because
I love that. The Bowling Green game was a lot of mush mouth from Tom Allen.
They adjusted, and in the second half, they held Bowling Green to like 80 yards, and they won the game. It was ugly, but they made it through. So.
And letdown games happen sometimes. But hey, boys, we got to move on to.
Yep.
We got 14 more games to cover, so go follow Keeping It Orange and Blue, the Illinois podcast. Check it out. Go ahead and lay out your Twitter handle. I think it's
it's
Ryan
at
200.
200 columns rye. That's right.
Yeah, at 200 columns rye. All right, man.
That's right. See you guys. Appreciate you.
See you, Ryan.
Hopefully we can see you again, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem, man. I will anytime. Just ask me.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
All right, see you.
All right, and Big Ten and beyond, man. Thanks again for joining us. Any last words?
Nah, man. Just appreciate. Just appreciate y'all, right? Trying to survive this banner out there on
Yep.
on the Twitters and everything, right?
Absolutely. It's been fun. It's been fun watching.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be an exciting game, and you know, for me, I look at it, right, and without trying to be a homer, I think looking at it with Drew Aller stepping up, it's what they needed. I think you know, Penn State's a real deal, and I want to see them. I want to see them show that on Saturday night. That's what I want to see.
Absolutely.
I want to see, you know, a convincing win. You know, so
yeah. Well, go follow Big Ten and Beyond. Definitely on Twitter, man. It gets interesting on there.
Yeah.
So go check it out. Appreciate you again, man.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
We'll see you.
All right. Vegas, you're back. We got to get all Vegased up, man. We got room service, so let's go.
Ooh.
Let's make these picks.
Yeah, well, let's get into some of the real numbers here with the Illinois-Penn State game. Spread started out at -18, and I know Big Ten Beyond was talking about 17.5. I would say most books have a consensus at -18, so it stayed pretty flat.
Right,
you may find one or two books at 17.5, but we're going to stick to -18 because I stick to one book when I do these. Over-under started 47.5, and it has stayed flat at 47.5. So you're really not seeing a whole lot of movement on the over-under.
You got to 48 on the spreadsheet, right?
No.
Oh, all right.
Oh, well, I gave you numbers as of yesterday. I update them as of today, so your numbers may be a little bit off.
Okay.
Actually dropped a half a point to stay pretty flat. As far as money's going, though, you are actually seeing about 71% of the cash in favor of Illinois. And really everything, we don't need to dive into it. We just did for 30 minutes. I do see this as a game that stays relatively tight early on. I think the second half is really going to be the question of, does Illinois have the level of talent and the depth of talent to keep this a competitive game against Penn State? With that -18, what I like about that is, let's say it's a 7-point game going into the fourth in favor of Penn State. Penn State has the horses, tack on another 10, they win by 17. That's why I take the points. Give me the Illini. How about you?
I'm with you, man. That's a lock on that. Let's
All
keep
right.
it.
Moving on.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we're going to get back into Georgia, the dump truck game of the week. Georgia at Alabama. Number 2, Georgia. Number 4, Alabama. Right now, these are the biggest programs in college football, man. And now with a new coach on the sidelines at Bama, it just got bigger for the big dicks of the SEC. DeBoer's there, and we talked about how good he is. You know, he hasn't really been quite on this level. Yeah, Washington and the Phoenix, he's a good recruiter. He kept all those wide receivers from transferring out when he got there, and he showed he can do it in some big games, but I think this is just on a different level, man. This is talent versus talent. Georgia versus Alabama. 2 of the best recruiting programs in the nation, if not the best. But to me, breaking this down, Beck this year is a little bit different. He doesn't seem to take shots downfield too much because I don't think he has the weapons to throw it to downfield, really. So he's really checking out, and the offensive line isn't quite as good. He's being pressured on a lot more passes. But Bama does have a young and kind of untested secondary. Joe Klatt on his podcast was talking about when he was at the Bama Wisconsin game, there were wide receivers running around wide open. It's just that they didn't have time to get it there, and their quarterback went out, so they didn't have a quarterback to really pressure down the field. But pressures on Beck is a concern, and can Bama get there? They have their freshman sensation at Bama at wide receiver, and Bama is getting 11 explosive plays per game, where 10 yards or more, and Georgia's only allowed 10 explosive plays all season. But Georgia's been tested, and they seem to always show up for big games, at least in my opinion, as of late. You know, the only games they're losing in conference is to Bama, and that was with the GOAT of them all, Nick Saban. So I'm probably leaning a little bit towards the dogs, but give me those numbers.
So you're seeing that with the public, really, where the line started at -4.5 in favor of Georgia. It has dropped to -2, so a 2.5-point swing. Georgia's still favored, but pretty tight. Over under stayed consistent all week at 49.5, so no change there. you're seeing about 54% of the cash in favor of Bama over the last 24 hours. So even with that line dropping 2.5, you're still seeing the cash favorable to Bama in that spread. What I like about these two teams when you look at it, they play competitive schedules year to day. You've got Georgia who's played Clemson and Kentucky. You got Alabama who's played Western Kentucky, USF and Wisconsin. No elite programs there, but it's better than 3 FCS teams. So both teams have been playing teams, have that competitive in play. I see in these kind of games, to your point, I think Georgia's offense has been a little sluggish. They certainly showed that against Kentucky, but they went all out against Clemson, which is their arrows pointing up. And Alabama with Jalen Milroe, I think they can score points here. I don't like kind of these games, and I stayed away from this in the SEC championship. I took the over on that one. I'm going to keep that trend and go with the over. How about you?
Oh man, this is just such a tough game. It means a lot to both programs. Georgia, if they lose this game, they have so many other games to go to. They're traveling to Texas. They're traveling to Ole Miss. They got a hell of a schedule, dude. So Georgia has to win this. I think. Yeah, Bama's got a tough schedule, but they don't travel to the 3 hardest teams in the league. Really,
at Tennessee and at LSU, those are 2, and at Oklahoma. So the
big,
3 toughest games on their schedule are all on the road for Alabama.
And this is also huge for Kalen DeBoer. I mean, he's coming in, taking over for the GOAT. He's got to assert his dominance now against one of the other best teams in the SEC historically, recency. But I think Georgia shows up for this game. I don't know what DeBoer's going to do in this level. He's got the talent, all the talent in the world, and so I expect him to do well. But I'm going to go with Kirby Smart, and he's going to lay the points.
All right, I got you for Georgia. You want me to drive?
Hey, oh man, I didn't even change the card here, man. Come on now, let's at least get Georgia, Alabama up there for a second, just to see what it's like. Forget those SEC junkies. Let's go. Let's bring it to the big dogs of the Big Ten. Come on, Ohio State versus Michigan State. Here we go.
So looking at these numbers, Ohio State started out at -25. You've seen that drop to -23.5. Same with the over-under. It started at 49.5. You've seen that drop to 48, so a 1.5 drop on both sides. However, where you've seen that 1.5 drop is the fact that over the last 36 hours, about 80% of the cash is rolling to Michigan State, and you're seeing about 61% of the cash rolling to the under. I think this is really due to the fact that Michigan State's been pretty stout on defense all in all. Offense is really not clicking. You saw last week with Ohio State, pretty consistent on offense, but didn't be as explosive as maybe they would have wanted to have been. Of course, didn't cover the spread last week. Defense was solid, but I'll tell you what, that running quarterback really gave Ohio State some issues, really exposed their run defense, I thought, a little bit. So in looking at all of this with that 48 number, I really don't know what kind of Michigan State team you're going to get. This is the first road game for Ohio State this year. However, I do think that Ohio State offense can be rather consistent. So I look at a game like this and I say, okay, 38-14, 38-13 is not out of the realm of possibility. I don't like the idea of some backdoor covers here by Michigan State, so I'd probably go conservative and take the over. How about you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go into it a little bit. Ohio State's first test of the season, really, because they have played nobody, and it comes against a young quarterback in Childs, and he will be tested against an NFL roster on that D, baby. The team's statistics for Ohio State are insane, and it's because of the competition, which is also insane who they're playing. Ohio State's scoring defense is 4th, giving up 6.7 points per game, where Michigan State's is 25th, giving up 14.4 points per game. Ohio State's offense is scoring tied with Miami for 3rd in the nation, 52.3 points per game, where Michigan State's, those Spartans, are 93rd, 25.5 points per game. And now, you got to take into point the competition for Michigan State. They played some great teams, and I really do think that Boston College team is a great team. Not elite, but they're a good team. I mean, they hung in there with Missouri, who was rated, and then played a good game and won it at the end against Michigan State. And also, they played Maryland, who's not a joke. They're no Akron or Marshall, right? But Michigan State leads the Big Ten in both sacks with 15 on the year and tackles for a loss with 32. And they have that dynamic quarterback, Childs, but he's thrown for 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. They're 118th in turnover margin, giving away 10 turnovers on the year and -5 for their turnover margin. So they haven't taken a lot back, but they're giving away a lot. Ohio State is +1 and tied for 56 in the nation. So a lot of those numbers are going to change, like we said, when they face some more competition. But yeah, I'm going with the over. I'm with you.
Yeah. I think it's a safe play here.
I think Ohio State will score. The thing that worries me is they might not allow Michigan State to score, just depending on how Childs plays. If he brings his A game and doesn't overthrow and cause some interceptions, then they might hang in there. And with the history of Ohio State and the way quarterbacks that have struggled all year have played against Ohio State in the past, they tend to have great games against Ohio State for some reason.
Yeah, and if he can run the ball at all, I really thought
dynamic running the ball. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really thought Marshall exposed that last week on Ohio State. I thought they were going 4 wide. They were spreading it out. They were forcing Ohio State to have 5 in the box, and they were going helmet to helmet, and they were moving the ball up and down the field.
All right, real quick, we need to get into a commercial because we haven't done any yet. So let me get this spicy in here. Let's get some Dan-O seasoning, if I can get on that right here. Let's make it hot.
Yum, yum, get you some. Very good. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some.
Dan-O seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe,
hey.
We all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dan-O's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
Yum, yum, get you some. What a great commercial, dude. I love that every time. Every single time that gets me all ready to eat. Let's go into the next one. We're going to go with right from Ohio State to Michigan, man. The other side of the rivalry. What do you got on Michigan and those Golden Gophers?
So you saw Michigan start out this week favored at -11. You've seen that drop now currently to -9.5. But the over-under has been the interesting one. It started at 39.5. It has plummeted to 35.5. About 91% of the cash, though, over the last probably 36 hours, give or take, is actually favoring Michigan. So I don't expect that 9.5 to stay there for very long. However, you're seeing still about 73% of the cash recently still going to the under. So there's a chance that under drops below 35 before the books close before this game. I think, yeah, in Michigan, I think just showed you quite a bit last week. And I know Orgy is not a finished product by any means. And I think some really good defenses are going to stop him. But the ability to just kind of move the ball, be fluid, hit the open receivers when he had to. I'll call him college open, not NFL open. I thought Michigan really kind of proved, okay, there's still a lot of talent on that roster. I think people kind of forgot that over the first few weeks. That's why I was cautioning people last week on that. I think this is a really deceptive line, to be honest with you. Again, Vegas rarely makes mistakes. No, I think they're dead wrong. I would take the points at 9.5, 10, 11. I would lay the points. Give me the Wolverines all day. I think they dominate this game. How about you?
I'm with you, and here's why I hate agreeing with you on everything, because, but I got to. Michigan showed that they have an identity finally, and the first game of the season, or first few games of the season, they were trying to force things that just they really didn't have. They wanted to be a balanced attack. And now they know their identity is run the damn ball and then run it some more, right? Minnesota showed that they're a little susceptible to the run based on last week, giving up 206 yards and 3 touchdowns to Caleb Johnson. And I know Caleb Johnson's the dude, but man, they could be in a long game for that little brown jug, the oldest trophy game in Big Ten history. I doubt anyone will ever beat that single season or single game rushing record that Melvin Gordon has of 408 yards. But as a team, they're going to stack up some yards against the Golden Gophers. Gophers are tied for 15th, giving up only 12.5 points per game. So they keep it low. They have a decent defense. 56 in the nation in rushing defense, giving up 123 yards per game. But against Michigan, probably one of, if not the best rushing offense in the nation. They're going to give up some more. And maybe not statistically, but they are a really good running team. Michigan is 55th in the nation, giving up 20.8 points per game. Their rushing offense is 31st in the land, like I said. But they are a better rushing team than that. Like I said, they tried to establish a little bit different identity and turn the ball over way too many times, which really affected some of their stats. You know, Warren he wasn't a guy that could pass the ball like they wanted him to. And maybe he just hasn't developed enough himself. But those statistics are going to change. They're going to become a better rushing team. They're just going to keep climbing those rankings. And like I said, remember, they just tried to be balanced before. Now they know their identity, and they're going to rush all over the field, man. You saw it last week. You know, that USC team had trouble stopping those big rushing plays.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they're for real, and I think Minnesota is not even going to go bowling this year.
Boom, let's get into another Big Ten game. We just talked about SEC, or USC, sorry, and we talked about Wisconsin a little bit, so let's get into this game. Wisconsin travels out to USC. Wisconsin 2-1 at number 13. USC also 2-1. So this is a big game really for both programs. You gotta USC needs that win. The Trojans need that Big Ten win. Wisconsin's showing that they have some vulnerabilities. They lost their quarterback, hit the injury bug again, and USC kind of just showed last week they can hang with the big dicks of the Big Ten, and they played physical. And they played maybe the most physical team, and they just got burnt by those big plays. But man, oh man, was that defense better than it was last year under that Alex Grinch experiment. And speaking of Alex Grinch, they get to go and be reunited with that safeties coach for Wisconsin, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things interesting about this one, and really it starts with where this line started. Again, when we're looking at opening lines, these can be a couple weeks back, so they can be a little deceptive. But the opening line consensus started at -4.5 in favor of USC. That has skyrocketed to -15.5. So you see an 11-point swing this week.
4.5. Holy cow.
Yeah, and this is where when you're looking at books, they try to do a consensus opening line, but I will say, especially early on, you don't know when that opening line occurred. It could have occurred 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. They compile a consensus for me, so I don't always want to say Sunday morning we woke up and it was 4.5. I was seeing single digits when I woke up on Sunday, and it's certainly risen. This is, again, one that I think Vegas, for some reason, just put that line a little too low, and I'm not really sure why. With the over-under, though, staying pretty consistent, started at 50.5, only jumped to 51, so pretty consistent there. About 78% of the cash is still flowing to USC, even at -15.5, so you're still seeing that money flow. About 58% is going to the over, but I really understand where the money's going. To me, if you look at Wisconsin's body of work, it's been absolutely atrocious, right? Barely winning against two mediocre teams, looked outclassed in every way, shape, and form against Alabama. Granted, Alabama is a playoff caliber team. We told you all in the offseason, bet that playoff with Bama because that was a crazy line. They're proving that to be true. But in USC's two of their first three games, have been against tough opponents. They played LSU and Michigan. So they're battle tested. They're ready. They're not playing the cupcakes early on. To me, I don't see any way in the world Wisconsin stays in this game, really puts up any points to speak of. Lay the points. Give me the Trojans. How about you?
Yeah, the Badgers are 69th in the nation, giving up 23 points per game, and they score only 21.67 points per game. So I look for it to be Miller time, and he's going to have a game against that former USC defensive coordinator and now in the backfield for Wisconsin for those Badgers. And Woody Marks will probably run with ease too. I mean, he's a tough runner. This is a good USC team, and they, even in a loss, they kind of proved it against Michigan last week. So it's bright. The future is bright for USC. They got a defense finally. They got a great offensive mind at head coach. You laid the points. Man, I'm trying to pick something different from you, but damn, you're making it so hard. I'm going to go with the over. I think USC can. Well, no, I won't. I got to go with the points too.
Yeah,
I wanted to choose something different, but it's just too damn easy.
No, this is about what we think is the most logical bet. You know, I know we do standings for fun, but you got to go with your first bet. So,
yeah, maybe I should pick first for a couple, and then you can copy me if mine are good enough.
Mine are already written down, man. So I ain't copying them. I barely listen to you. So
let's go here. We got Maryland at Indiana. This is a really, really interesting game for me. You're going to find out what these programs are all about real quick, and especially Indiana, because they played some cream puffs. Other than UCLA, I mean, that game, I think, at least UCLA has some talent, right, compared to who else they were playing, you know, like Western Illinois, the Leathernecks. They've really had a weak schedule, and even Kurt Signetti himself has said it's been a weak schedule. And so this is where we really find out where there will be. And Indiana will probably be rated next week if they win this game. People will start to look at all right, that 4-0 was for real if they beat Maryland, because Maryland's, you know, a decent team. They're not anything to write home about, but they're a Big Ten. I don't want to say contender, but mid-tier team every year. And they have a great quarterback. This is going to be a battle of quarterbacks. Billy Edwards Jr. has 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I believe he's like 16th in passing in the nation. And Curtis Rourke, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Doing well. Curtis Rourke was a great fit for Kirk Signetti, getting them. Maryland is giving up 34.8 points per game. And let's see, they're 33rd in the nation in points per game at 16.8. All right. Indiana is tied for 7th, giving up only 9.3 points per game, and 5th in scoring at 50.5 points per game. But like we said, they played some absolute cream puffs. We're really going to see what it's all about. Let's get those stat numbers and give this a pick.
So starting spread was 6.5 in favor of Indiana. That's jumped slightly to -7. Over under started at 55.5. It has dropped to 52. And then I'm going to hold off talking. You're going to pick first based on those numbers. What do you want?
52. Indiana hasn't really faced anyone of this level yet. So I am going to go. Oh, man, this is a real tough one. I want to go with the under, but give me Indiana. Lay the points.
Wow. Interesting. All right. Well, I'm laughing because I had the under going, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
First off, about a 90% chance of rain in Bloomington, which is probably one of the factors as to why you're seeing that number dropping with the under a little bit. However, I will say to your benefit, about 93% of the cash is flowing to Indiana. So you locked in at -7. You could see this at -7.5, -8.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in games like this, I'll tell you flat out, this is one of those do not touch games. I'm only doing this on the show for fun. I personally would not touch this game at all because you have no idea what you're going to get from this Indiana squad. Yes, they've taken care of business. They've done what they've done. I love Rourke. I loved him all the way down at OU back in the day. But I just don't know what this team can do when they actually face decent competition. In Maryland, if you start looking at their schedules, and again, teams think about this, right? Maryland needs to be a perennial bowl team. You know, that's kind of where their bar needs to be set. That's where a lot of these average Big Ten teams is you want to start stacking bowl seasons. And if you can do that 3-4 consecutive years, you tell those recruits, hey, we're going bowling every year, come aboard. That builds a lot of credibility. Well, Maryland needs this one because if you look at their schedule, if they lose this game, it is very logical to see 5 more losses on their schedule. If they start stumbling, that'd put them at a 5-7 team. So they really, really do need this. Yeah. You got it up right there. I mean, I don't.
So Northwestern, that should be a win. USC, they got Minnesota, which is
Minnesota's one of the worst in the Big Ten. I will keep banging
probably
that
now. And then Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State. Those last 4 games are.
I know, and that Rutgers game could be really tough. Again, Rutgers could be seriously. I can't believe we're saying this.
Contention for the Big Ten.
they could be looking at a double-digit win season. So that, those could be 4 losses. USC's a loss. So there you go. There's your 5, right? And right now, if they lost this game to Indiana, that would be 6. That would put them at 7 losses. So these teams
that
are
loss
really,
to Michigan State really hurt them in the beginning of the season.
It really, really did. That was a tough one, and especially losing at home. If that was in East Lansing, I understand. I've seen nothing from Indiana that tells me what I'm going to get from this team, and until they start stacking a couple wins against, I'll call it the middle of the road Big Ten, I don't trust them, but I don't trust Maryland either. Give me the rain and the under.
The rain and the under. All right. Well, this show is brought to you by the College Football Dogs. They're putting on our network. We're part of their network, the College Football Dogs, so go check them out. I'm going to give you a little bit of their commercial, and then we're going to get back to trimming the landscape, my man. So watch this. Go follow the College Football Dogs, baby. They're doing big things, man. Credentials everywhere. Going to games, writing about it. It's awesome. Check them out.
On the College Football Dogs website, you'll find a main page that features some of our biggest and newest stories. Our conference pages for content related to your favorite team's conference. Our team store, where we have products that are available all year long, as well as gear available for a limited time only. Our podcast page, where you can see when one of the 12-plus College Football Dogs podcasts is streaming live on social media. Our subscription page, where you can join our Discord. If you're interested in becoming a contributor at College Football Dogs, email us at info@collegefootballdogs.com. If you enjoy any College Football Dogs content, we really do appreciate any donations you can make by visiting the donate page on our website or scanning the QR code here.
College Football Dogs, for the fans.
Yeah, buddy, College Football Dogs for the fans. Well, we got to trim that landscape, baby. Can you hear me good?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Here we go. All right, we got what happened last week, man. These two teams both losing. All right. Well, I won't be able to hear you well because I think my headphones might have went out. But anyway, you can hear me just fine, right?
Yes, I can.
All right, here we go. Kansas State, man, I can't believe they're rated after getting whooped on by BYU. And Oklahoma State played pretty terrible until the last minutes of the game. So let's just get into those numbers and get through this one because the loser of this team is pretty much out of contention for the Big 12, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that's a good point to start with Utah dominating, looking like the 1 seed in the Big 12. 2 losses is going to be tough to overcome. So Kansas State started out -6.5. That's dropped to -5. Over under started at 52.5. That has jumped all the way up to 57.5. You're seeing about 87% of the cash in favor of Kansas State over the last 36 hours. And I'll tell you what, I thought we had a pretty good read on these two teams going into last week. I thought Oklahoma State was better than Utah with a hobbled Cam Rising. Obviously, Utah won that game. And I thought Kansas State 2 weeks ago just looked dominant against a very solid Arizona opponent. Thompson just, I thought, was lighting it up. I thought, okay, you go take care of business at BYU. This is going to be a great top 15 matchup coming into this week. Well, your point, Kansas State got obliterated. And so I look at these two teams early on with that tough loss. They're going to be fighting and scrapping. I don't like anything about this spread, so I go with the public and I go with the over. How about you?
I'm going to go with the under on this. I just don't think that these two teams really know what they are. I know Kansas State likes to run the ball. Their Avery Johnson is just amazing athlete with the ball in his hands, but not that dynamic of a passer. And I don't know what you're going to get out of Oklahoma State because they can't run the ball with Ollie Gordon, and their quarterback has kind of taken over. Bowman has taken over the game and taken over the stats, but didn't play real good last week. So I'm going to go with the under.
All right, I got you down. My apologies. With Thompson, I'm thinking Skylar Thompson with Miami, who got obliterated last week. Avery Johnson, been messing up quarterbacks the last few weeks, man. My apologies.
Hey, man, it happens. We got the whole nation to go over, and we got day jobs, man. So even the pros, the guys that do this all day long.
I know, man. Well, I don't want to upstate those Wildcats in Manhattan, so I got to apologize and own up to it. So
it's all good, brother. All right, let's move on to more trimming the landscape. This is a big game. Big game. Louisville. See, I'm messing up myself. Number 15, Louisville. At number 16, Notre Dame. The injury bug for Louisville is all over the place. Quincy Riley, an All-American cornerback, is questionable for the game. Game time decision. Jaden Thompson's down. Saunders is down. Running back Maurice Turner is also down. Brian Brom got transfer portal. They got Tyler Shunk. And I trust Brian Brom and what he's going to bring to the table. His analysis for quarterbacks is off the charts. So I think that Tyler will be a good quarterback in the long run. But the Louisville defensive line is going to eat. I mean, they are going to eat against this Notre Dame offensive line, which I think is highly questionable. Like, the only thing Notre Dame really has on offense is Riley Leonard running the ball. So they have to just face the facts. They have to pull an orgy and be like, yo, run the damn ball, man. Let's go ahead and let's face our identity and go with it, because they're not throwing the ball. That's for damn sure. I think it's going to be a defensive game. Notre Dame needs this one. So because I don't trust either of the offenses and it's only the defense that I trust, I'm going to go with the under, no matter what it is. You don't even have to read it to me.
Well, I'll say you're going with the consensus because we'll start right there. Over under start at 48. It dropped to 46 over the last week. So you've seen a -2 drop there. Notre Dame came in -10 favorites. That has dropped to -7. What I would say again early on, I just don't know what you're going to get from this Louisville team, right? Played awesome.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, you just really don't. And a nice win against Georgia Tech, but I think the shine's come off the apple with Georgia Tech, right? They beat a pretty crappy Florida State team. They lost to Syracuse and Honda McCord. I mean, so that win's not very impressive to me. What I do really like about Notre Dame is we talked about this after the Northern Illinois game. Coach Freeman has struggled, really. When he gets a loss, sometimes he stubs his toe again. It's hard to get his team back together. I love the fact that they just blew Purdue out of the water. You know,
Yeah.
and obviously it's a one-game anomaly, but what it told me is he got through to his players that week. He said, hey, stubbed your toe. That's not the way we play. This is how we play. And they went out and
Let's bounce
executed
back.
And then the week, last week being Miami of Ohio, which is a surprising 0-3 team. We talked in week 1 that could be a sneaky playoff team.
They're gonna be tough,
It just the dice haven't rolled their way this year, but they won 28-3. So Notre Dame does what they need to do to win. I would definitely
that was Purdue. And
Yeah.
we're going to talk about Purdue in a little bit.
No, I get it, but to me, style points matter in college football. They mean nothing in the NFL, but they mean a lot in college football. How are you winning? How are you doing week to week? And I thought that was a very impressive showing by Notre Dame 2 weeks ago. I like that because I've seen that from this program and their ability to do it. I was leaning a little bit towards the under as well, but I want to go a little contrarian with you. I would tell the public this is a stay away game. You have no idea, no read on these two teams, so I would not be betting this game. But since this is a show and it's for entertainment purposes only, give me Notre Dame.
Oh, give you Notre Dame. Laying the points, huh?
I am laying those 7. Yes, sir.
Damn it. All right. We got to get to it. The Quickies. Rapid fire! Here we go. Let's make this quick, brother.
Yes, sir.
Georgia. I don't know where Georgia came from. Again, messing up. Oregon versus UCLA. It's kind of funny. I posted a little bit earlier this week that Oregon's first Big Ten game is on the West Coast in Pasadena against a former Pac-12 team. 3-0 Oregon versus 1-2 UCLA. Man, they put up a fight last week against LSU in UCLA, those Bruins. I did not expect that at all. I expect a pure ass whooping. So maybe Deshaun Foster and his crew have kind of put together something to get this team a little energized, and maybe they give Oregon a game, but I doubt it, man. Oregon's fighting on all cylinders. They did lose a I think they had a guard that went back out with injury. He came back and then went back out again on the bye week with injury. So that offensive line was just starting to gel too. So they lose another starter on the offensive line. That's a little rough for them, but I don't think they're going to need it against UCLA.
Agreed. And right now the spread's at minus 25.5 in favor of Oregon.
Ooh.
Jumped a 1.5 over a week. Over-unders at 55. However, you're seeing about 72% of the cash flow into UCLA. And you saw this last week against LSU. UCLA was a 24-point dog. It closed at 20.5. You were seeing a ton of that money flow to UCLA, and they played a really competitive game against LSU. However, I don't care about any of that. Lay the points. Give me the Ducks.
I'm going to go with the over in this.
All right.
That's a large, we have 26
Not for an
points.
Oregon team. I mean, you saw they won by 35 against an Oregon State on the road. Oregon has the level of talent that winning a game by 35 points is like, okay, no big deal. That's the kind of talent they have. So I don't see it being much.
On to the next one. We're picking at Nebraska versus Purdue. Nebraska 3-1, a heartbreaker last week on Friday night, like we talked about. Purdue 1-2 on the season. Purdue might be up there, or down there, if you want to call it, rather, for the worst Power 5 team. Purdue is 132nd in rush defense, but the bright spot for that defense is Jenkins for the Boilermakers. He leads the defense and leads the Big Ten in sacks at 1.17 per game and is second in the Big Ten in tackles for a loss. Both of these were top 10 in the nation. He had 16 tackles for a career high last week. So what do you say about Nebraska at Purdue?
One of the weirdest lines of the week for sure. Nebraska is at minus 10 and is State at minus 10. However, I will say over the last 24 hours, you're seeing a massive influx of cash in favor of Nebraska at around 92%. So I don't expect that minus 10 to stay there for long. Over understand at 48. To me, this line makes absolutely no sense. Purdue got their doors blown off by Notre Dame. They lost by 17 to Oregon State. Nebraska played a very competitive game, and I think when the season flushes out, you could see a ranked Illinois team, and that looks like a very competitive loss. Lay the points, give me the Cornhuskers. Don't think twice. How about you?
Lay the points, give me the Cornhuskers. I'm with you. It's a lock there.
Yeah, don't see much there.
All right, we got to really rapid fire this one. This is actually a really interesting game, and probably for you being out on the West Coast. Boise State and Washington State, man, what a game. Washington State came through, won the Apple Cup. Boise State is ranked 25 right now. Wow, this is going to be a good game. What do you got?
Yeah, so right now you're seeing that line move just a little bit. It's now -7 in favor of Boise State and an over-under at 64 here. I tell you what, I just don't know what you're going to get from this Washington State team. On paper, they just don't really have the talent. But my goodness, are they playing with a ton of spirit and a ton of heart? Get some echo.
Yeah, my speakers or my headphones are out. So this is going to be our last pick anyway. So let's just get through this. A little bit of echo. Sorry about those.
Yeah, no worries. I'll power through it.
Yeah.
We'll just keep this one simple. Washington State can score a ton of points. Boise State can score a ton of points. I don't care about the 64. Give me the over.
Give you the over. Washington State, ton of points. Or I'm going to go with, oh, man. I think Boise State takes it, man. Boise, lay with the points. Give me Boise State. 7.5. You're going to go with the over at 63, man. Wow. Other big games that I want to talk about, we're not going to actually make the pick, but Fresno State and UNLV. UNLV is in some disaster of trouble with their quarterback leaving the team, taking his redshirt year and gone. I mean, this is a whole new world of college football, so I don't even really want to get into it, but it's just sad state of affairs that this is what college football has brought themselves to. So we might see more of this in the future. I mean, things like this kind of tend to snowball and more teams do it. UNLV might be in some problems with recruits in the future because now a second string running back is also sitting out, taking his redshirt year and transferring, hitting the portal after this. So, man, bad things are happening. in your neck of the woods down there in Vegas. I mean, they went into Vegas thinking they were going to get money, and they came out with a little bit more than they expected. Sounds like the story of our lives, right?
Amen.
All right. Well, welcome, Big Ten backers. Thanks for coming in, man. I enjoyed every minute of it. Vegas, Matt, thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing us those numbers. But the Big Ten backers are out. God bless everyone and have a wonderful weekend watching college football. And don't forget, there are games on Friday night tomorrow. Take care. Peace out.